Let's go to the Main Street Family Urgent Care Hotline. The voice of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks on the phone with us, Mike Parris. Mike, how excited are you that football is just a couple of weeks away, buddy?
I'm glad I still got about 3 weeks, or now less than 3 weeks for us to get it going. But, yeah, I'm excited. It's been a long time. Well, I say a long time. We played into January, first time that's ever happened at Jacksonville State before. So it's our guys going at it. In fact, they had 10 straight practices without any kind of a break or anything, and Coach Gross was kind enough to give a little bit of break today.
I saw that earlier on Twitter. He put out there. He gave the guys the day off, and I know that they're probably super excited about that and to take a little bit of a breather. Talking about last season, making it to the national championships, it seemed like it got the whole city of Jacksonville and really East Alabama really behind the Gamecocks. Talk about last season and how big of an impact that made at Jacksonville State.
Well, the 3 playoff games we had at home in December, we had Chattanooga in the first weekend of December in the quarterfinals, Charleston Southern, a Friday night game in the semis, or in the we had Chattanooga second round and then Charleston Southern quarters, and then in the semis, Sam Houston State. 3 largest crowds we've ever had, and the last one in the semis against Sam Houston State was the largest crowd we've ever had at Burgess Snow Field. And the one thing that jumped out at me, I guess, midst of all that, was school was already out, finals were over, and our students already gone home, but boy, they were back and packed the place. It was it was the best environments in those 3 playoff games that we had, but even prior to that, the home games during the regular season, we'd had great attendance. In fact, I think we finished number 3 in the country last year in FCS play, averaged over 20,000. And the folks ahead of us are actually, I think, state institutions, so they don't have to fight somebody like, the 2 folks in state that we fight, and other SEC schools as well. And I think over the last 12 years, we're averaging better than 17,000 per contest. So, our fan base has grown, excitement has grown, and the optimism and all the excitement for this coming season is probably the highest it's ever been at Jacksonville State.
Mike, talking about 2016 coming up, talk about the roster that you guys have returning, maybe some key contributors, and, of course, that's headlined by quarterback Eli Jenkins returning for his senior year.
We have 5 starters back on offense, and Eli's a preseason All-American. He was the male athlete of the year last year in the Ohio Valley Conference, first time since we joined the league that we've had an athlete receive that honor at Jacksonville State. He's a preseason offensive player of the year. He's just been tremendous, and it's hard to believe. When Bill Clark came in and took our job in 2013, Eli really was playing defensive back at that time. Wow. We didn't have a quarterback heading into spring practice, and they moved him over there. And we played actually 3-4 guys at quarterback. Eli got hurt during the year. Max Shortell had transferred in, and he played some. Kyle West played some, who was our third-string quarterback, because Max got beat up too. But really, I guess that year we got hot late, got into the playoffs in 13, and had to play an opening round game Thanksgiving weekend against Sanford. And our coaches felt like that it was during that game that the light bulb, the light switch, whatever, sort of clicked for Eli. I'm telling you, from that point on, he has been very, very good, and he's a guy that has really matured a whole lot. He redshirted his first year, and I talked about this yesterday. I had a speaking engagement. To see where he is now, just the way he's matured, where he was 4 years ago, I mean, it's really amazing. That's one neat thing about my job since I am employed by the university. You see them come in as freshmen, and they're a little timid and shy, don't want to look at you when they talk to you. Boy, I'm telling you now, if somebody sticks a TV camera in his face, it doesn't bother him at all. I mean, he's very good with interviews and stuff. And we've got another young man at wide receiver. It's a preseason All-American, and Josh Barge. And he and I were talking the other day. He's a fifth-year senior. He weighed 153 pounds when he came to us out of high school, and he weighs about 175 now. And he still, to me, doesn't look like he weighs over 160. But if the ball's in the air, he's going to catch it 99 out of 100 times. He's as good as I've ever seen, and just very intense. He's just a gamer, a baller, as they like to say. We've got 3 offensive linemen, 2 that are All-Americans, and our center, Casey Dunn, and then Justin Lee, who is from up at Ider.
Mm-hmm.
Those two guys are preseason All-Americans as well as All-Conference. And then on the defensive side of the football, that's where we're hurting a little bit. We only have really 2 full-time starters from last year back, a couple other guys that were part-time starters because of injuries. We lost 3/4 of our secondary, but they feel like, coaches do, that we've got a lot of talent back there. We've got some young guys who will be starting this year that played quite a bit last year, just were not starters. But we're going to have to rely, especially in the early going, on some young guys in the early part of the season.
You know, something that's always amazed me is you get transfers, and we've been talking about grad transfers and transfers all week long with Alabama and Maurice Smith. But something that has amazed me with Coach Gross and even with Bill Clark is they're so welcoming of some of these transfers coming in. And Coach Gross has done a great job of getting these guys in and molding them into his team and making them fit. Talk about how good of a job he's done with that.
Well, and we've had some, and everybody, especially last year, played that up. And, you know, they don't open the door and just let everybody rush in that wants to transfer. No. They do their due diligence. And some of these guys actually were guys that we might have had some recruiting, recruited them coming out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Landrum's a great example. He's a young man, played his freshman year, redshirted at Auburn, played his freshman year down there. And he left Auburn simply because he just wasn't getting the playing time that he wanted. So he comes to us, ends up being an All-American. He's at San Diego Chargers camp right now.
Yeah.
And he's running, I think, second, third team for them. But he's a guy that, is an example of that. Now, we've got Al Harris, who's transferred from South Carolina, is probably going to start at a corner for us. We've got a fifth-year guy that's transferred in from Purdue, who's an Alabama native, and Jonathan Curry. And we've got a couple other guys. But as he pointed out at our media day, everybody wants to talk about our transfers, but you look at Eli, fifth-year senior,
Mm-hmm.
Josh Bard's a fifth-year senior, Casey Dunn's a fifth-year senior, Justin Lee is a redshirt junior, so his fourth year in the program. The majority of our guys are homegrown, as he said that day. But if you look throughout FCS football, most everybody's got transfers, especially when you get toward the end of the playoffs and things. And it's just, you've got to get guys that are the right fit and will work within your program. And, we've taken, our previous coaching staff took some chances on guys that had been in trouble at other places and things. And quite honestly, we've got a couple now that had some disciplinary action taken against them, but they've been model citizens so far in our place.
I know last year I went to several games, saw JSU play. One thing that always impressed me was the depth that JSU had on the defensive line. Talk about some of the guys coming back this year. I know that they really didn't start last year, but talk about those guys on the defensive line.
Well, start with Desmond Owino. He's a preseason all-conference guy. He's a junior college guy from Texas. He's a native of Kenya, where he's from. So He really hasn't played a whole lot of football in his life. He went to high school in North Carolina, and they tried to make a wide receiver out of it. But to hear him to tell the story, I mean, it's hilarious. Evidently, his hands weren't even as good as bricks, really. I don't know. He couldn't catch anything until they finally moved him inside. But he's a guy that I really think is going to have a breakout year. He was very good coming in last year, played quite a bit. Randy Robinson played some as a true freshman. He'll start for us. E.J. Moss is a young man who played outside last year, but they've moved him inside. He's from St. Clair County High School.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So we've got those guys. Joseph Roberts transferred to us and played quite a bit last year from UAB. Dalton Campbell, who's I guess a second-generation Gamecock. He's from Vestavia, and his dad was a tight end on our championship team back in '92, as a matter of fact. So, but he'll play some on the outside as well. And you're right, we had a lot of depth last year, but we also, LaMichael Fanning had transferred from Alabama, and it ended up Fanning missed the majority of the season. He played very little, injured a knee. In fact, the week after the Auburn game a year ago, he missed the rest of the season. Thought he might get another year this year if the NCAA did not rule in his favor, and he's in the Jets training camp right now. And then Devontae Sigler, who had been the player of the year defensively 2 years ago in the OVC, he was beat up, banged up most of the year last year, and he didn't play a whole lot. That's what I mentioned earlier about guys getting some experience last year. Owino and Robinson really took advantage of that.
Hey, do you have time to stay on one more segment with us?
Yeah, Sure do.
All right, coming up next, we'll continue with Mike Parris's
bank. Phone number to get in on the Main Street Family Urgent Care Hotline, 274-9530. Give us a call. Talk about the Olympics or college football coming up, whatever may be on your mind. Right now on the Main Street Family Urgent Care Hotline is the voice of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks, Mike Parris, joining us for another segment. And Mike, as we continue talking about the season that's coming up, you guys open on a Thursday night with North Alabama there at home.
Right.
And then you guys travel to Baton Rouge the second week down to LSU. And, of course, as everyone knows, you guys went to Auburn last year and almost pull off the upset. But, talk about that LSU game. I know it's not a conference game, but it's a big game for you guys and probably a game that the guys have a lot of confidence going into after going down to Auburn and playing the way they did last year.
Well, you're right, but I'm afraid LSU is probably going to be the best team we've played since we made the move.
Yeah.
Since going to Division I, we've played at Arkansas, Mississippi State a couple of times. Of course, we beat Ole Miss back in 2010. We've also been over to Georgia Tech a couple of times, Florida State, Kansas. I'm leaving somebody out, but those kind of games. Michigan State, we opened up there 2 years ago in 2014, and they were ranked, I think, 7th or 8th in the country, went on to win the Big Ten and won the Rose Bowl that year. But I think LSU is probably, in these games that we've played, these guarantee games, this is going to be the best team that we've ever faced. Auburn was number 6. We went down there last year, and obviously they weren't as good as people thought they were going to be. And, I don't think there's any comparison from the Auburn game and LSU this year. With Fournette, scary when you look at him and how good they are up front on defense and what they've got on defense. So I'm looking forward to it. I lived in New Orleans as a kid for about 2.5 years, so I know, from those days and following college football, what it's like at Tiger Stadium on a Saturday night. But our guys are excited and looking forward to it. I don't know. There's been a rumor floating around when our guys sort of sent Mr. Fournette a message that the Gamecocks were coming. I hope that's not true. Don't want to poke that bear into your Tigers. I don't know about that. I haven't been able to verify that yet.
Well, don't want to give them any bulletin board material, that's for sure.
No, not at all.
Moving into the conference in the OVC, talk about the conference outlook this year and some of the teams that you guys will compete with within the OVC.
Well, and we've got a big target on our back because we haven't lost a league game since near the end of the 2013 season. In fact, obviously that's a big if, but if we could go unbeaten again this year, I think we set a new OVC record for most consecutive wins. East Kentucky will be good. They're always very good. Matty Moss, who was at Missouri, is transferred. He's going to be their quarterback more than likely. I'll be surprised if he's not. Eastern Illinois will be very good. They usually have a few transfers, and defensively, their guys are as good as anybody around with what they do with their scheme. Those two teams, I think, will be right there. They would pick second and the third in the preseason polls behind us. Tennessee Martin's the team. Jason Simpson is their head coach up there, and he was an assistant at our place a few years back, but he's done a tremendous job in a place that's got to be difficult to recruit to, in my opinion. But they usually are pretty good, and I think they'll be somewhere in the top 4 of the league as well. And Southeast Missouri State is probably, I think they've been improving under their head coach, Tom Tukowitz, the last couple of years, and I think that they will probably give us some fits. They got a guy, lost a wide receiver they've got to replace who's at NFL camps right now who's an outstanding talent. But I think those are the folks that we got to contend with. And our schedule, really, you mentioned North Alabama. I think they'll be top 15 and if not top 10 in Division II. Then LSU, and then we got to play a Coastal Carolina team who's been very successful in FCS play and transitioning to the next level. So they'll actually have about 75 scholarship players to our 63 when they come in. And then in week 4, we got a non-conference game up in Virginia against Liberty University, and they have been some giant killers for the last. I think they've beaten a top 10 team in each of the last 4 years. So our schedule, the first 4 weeks is going to be very difficult, and then we get into the league play after that. And obviously, everybody will be coming after us then too.
I'm an Asheville grad, just like head coach John Gross, and I remember him back at his Asheville days. But talk about him and his staff.
Is he as good as he claims to have been in high school?
John was every bit as good, and I can vouch for that. I remember him coaching at Asheville, and he was actually lives right behind me in downtown Asheville, and
Well,
love him and his wife. But talk about, since he took over, of course, he was an offensive coordinator for 1 year under head coach Bill Clark. Talk about the job that he's done at Jacksonville and his coaching staff. They've done a wonderful job, but talk about them.
He transitioned in there, pretty easily. He was at Oxford High School before he came to our place as offensive coordinator, and had success at Oxford, and several guys playing in major college football. And he and Bill Clark, great story, really. Clark is from Piedmont, actually, but the two of them met first day of class as students at Jacksonville State, struck up a friendship. And so Clark hires him when he comes in at 13, and then he takes the job at UAB. And it, for our guys, they really wanted that. They, especially the offensive guys, they liked Coach Gross that first year and liked the offense and everything. And, boy, it's been a pretty seamless change and transition. He's 23-4 in his 2 years as a head coach. Two of those losses were to Michigan State and Auburn, and one of those, both of them top 10 in the country when we played them. And then the other two losses, obviously the national championship game, and then the year prior in the second round of the playoffs. So that's, all the losses have been to nationally ranked teams, either FBS or FCS teams. And I think first and foremost, it's a family atmosphere, family environment, and that's what he preaches. He brought in David Blackwell, who had a lot of experience, and as a guy as a co-defensive coordinator. Brandon Hall was another guy who had some experience with Bob Stoops, had been with Gus Malzahn as well at Arkansas State, then at Auburn. And those two guys really are the veterans on the staff. All the other guys are young guys. But, boy, I tell you, they've done a great job, and our guys really, react to them and play well for them.
Well, we appreciate you so much for coming on with us, and we look forward to talking to you each week as the season progresses.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. There's the voice of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks, Mike Parris. Follow him on Twitter at JSU Voice. He'll give you all kinds of information with JSU and what's going on. And also in a couple of weeks on the 27th at Stevenson Hall, it'll be Football Fan Day. So if you get a chance to go out there, I know they have a couple of local boys from Blount County, and of course one from Asheville that he got to mention, E.J. Moss. And I was kind of fishing a little bit, wanting him to say E.J. Moss from Asheville. And but a good interview, get caught up with JSU, and should be a good year for them.
It should be.